Let me start with a question. What happens to a player's mindset when everything has been built around one moment and then that moment starts to slip away? Because that's what the test match in Adelaide actually revealed. Not just a team losing a game, but the psychological cost of years of planning, of expectation, and of identity being loaded into a single event. The Ashes didn't just matter, they became defining. And when that happens, pressure doesn't just arrive on the day, it comes quietly, months earlier, and then it starts to build in preparation, in selection, and in how players start to think about themselves and their own game. When one event becomes the focal point for everything, the mind starts to narrow. Planning becomes rigid, flexibility reduces. Everything is judged through one single outcome. Outwardly, the language stays calm, process, clarity, control, but internally, something else is happening. The mind begins to treat the event not as a challenge, but as a verdict. And when that happens, performance changes. There's more urgency, more over control, more fear of losing what's already been invested. Pressure isn't created by the occasion itself, it's created by what's been attached to it over a period of time. The second issue is identity. England have spent the last 4 years building a very clear way of playing and a very clear idea of what that said about who they were. And that kind of clarity, it can be really powerful, but only if it holds when the challenge is high. And what appeared in the third test was hesitation, moments where identity felt softened, questioned, or selectively abandoned. And psychologically, that's a really dangerous place to be, because when players spend years reinforcing, one way of operating, and then they feel the need to change it in the biggest moment of their career, the mind doesn't adapt quickly. It freezes. Instincts no longer align with decisions and confidence turns into second guessing. Pressure tests belief, but it also tests trust. Trust in your preparation, trust in habits, trust in yourself. And when identity becomes negotiable under pressure, that trust starts to erode. And once that happens, clarity goes with it. So this isn't about whether an identity is right or wrong. It's about what happens when it isn't protected. And the most important lesson from this test isn't tactical, isn't technical, it's psychological. Pressure doesn't come from the moment itself. It comes from what we've attached to that moment over a period of time. An identity doesn't break just because of one failure. It breaks when it's abandoned at the exact moment it's needed most. So that's the real cost and the real risk of building everything around one outcome and one way of being. And this is where the real work sits, not in chasing one defining moment, not in clinging to a single version of identity, but in building something that can absorb pressure without being distorted by it. Strong performance isn't about peaking just for one occasion. It's about remaining stable when outcomes change, when pressure peaks, and when expectations fall away. And with the Boxing Day test starting on Friday, there's still an opportunity, not to prove anything, not to rescue a narrative, but to simply play with clarity and to trust the identity that they've invested so heavily in, rather than stepping away from it completely. And hopefully that's what we'll see from England later this week.